Globus Show. See the sights, so much to know. Across the lands together we go. Hand in hand we join the flow. Discover wonders in the Globus Show, where every day's a brand new episode. On the Globus Show, it's time to learn and grow. On the Globus Show.
It's so strange, well I know those lakes of golden water, those lakes of gold are all running out. Well, you saw him and you can't hardly know. It's so strange, well I know. Joy, 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 work, work, work harder, sure as the hours. Joy, 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 work, work, work harder, you say. On some days he's more than humble. On some days he's cold and mad, mad as hell. Well, you saw him and you can't hardly know. It's so strange, well I know. Those lakes of golden water, those lakes of gold are all running out. Well, you saw him and you can't hardly know. It's so strange, well I know. Joy, 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 work, work, work harder, sure as the hours. Joy, 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 work, work, work harder, you say. Joy, 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 work, work, work harder, sure as the hours. Joy, 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 work, work, work harder, you say.
Come along, join the fun, in a world where adventure is never done. Every corner we turn, a new friend in tow. It's time to start the magic on the Globus Show. It's time to learn and grow on the Globus Show. See the sights, so much to know. Across the lands, together we go. Hand in hand we join the flow. Discover wonders in the Globus Show, where every day's a brand new episode. Globus Show. See the sights, so much to know. Across the land, together we go. Hand in hand, we join the flow. Discover wonders in the Globus Show. Where every day's a brand new episode on the Globus Show. It's time to learn and grow on the Globus Show.
Do 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 ba do ba do ba do ba do ba do 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 ba da do ba do do ba do ba do do ba do ba do 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 ba do ba do do ba do ba do da 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 ba da ba da ba da ba da ba da ba 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 da ba da ba da ba da ba 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 da 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 ba 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 da ba da ba da ba da ba 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 da ba da ba da ba ba. From the top, what up Twitch? What up PETA? What up Hydran? What up bots? What up lurkers? What up tiny people in my chatterino? What up Stampy? It's your boy. It's your boy, at long last. Back once again. Back once again. Oh. Yeah. Job is still jobbing. I went to the doctor and I have the metabolism of a person 20 years younger than me. So that's cool. That's about it. How you doing? Oh, I guess we can get into it. First off, the song I wanted to play at the beginning of stream that I forgot about.
Greetings, people of the internet! It's your friend from the
Cool. Now let's get into content. Consciousness isn't what we thought. Oh, sorry.
Let's talk about consciousness. Some researchers believe that they created a robot that technically qualifies as conscious. Humans are failing the Turing test, which is, reasonable. Many animals that have previously failed tests for consciousness are now passing because researchers didn't really identify consciousness well and are trying to improve that. Are we ever going to have to accept rights?
Hold up. The boy has arrived. Hello, the boy. Everybody's fighting on the internet again. Snack time. And the living is easy. Big snacks. Big snack energy. Big snack energy for a big boy. All right. Back to the show.
For robots, we'll talk about all of this. Also, before I even start, consciousness is not quantum. I mean, it might be quantum. We don't have evidence for it. There's quantum stuff happening everywhere. There's no evidence that consciousness is shared. And no, that study that I covered that showed that people tend to sync up their brain patterns when they're talking to each other does not demonstrate psychic abilities.
Is it? Did y'all even see the video? Why is everything jacked up? There we go.
It demonstrates a form of consciousness in which you develop an internal model of others and also, feelings can be contagious. It just doesn't mean it's happening supernaturally. Okay. The first thing you have to know about consciousness is that, yes, some researchers, particularly psychologists, have tried to develop a unified way to determine if somebody is conscious, and it's really complicated. There are going to be varying levels of consciousness, and self-concept is the one that we usually think of. Do I perceive myself as separate from others? Do I understand that I have an internal world and others have an internal world, which would be the next level? Not everybody actually passes that one. Then there's going to be the medical terminology. Are you awake, aware, and responsive? All of these come together to develop an idea of what consciousness means. Now, crows, as intelligent as they are, fail the mirror test, meaning if you put a little bit of trash on a crow and put it in front of the mirror, no, they're not going to clean it off. Also, fish have passed that test. Now, chickens may not groom themselves if you put them in front of a mirror. However, if you put a chicken and another chicken in a box and then show a bird flying overhead, one chicken will alert the other. Meaning, yes, it does know that the mirror image is not itself. I will say that my cat may look in the mirror and then push her ears down and just play with her image. But sometimes, if she suddenly sees a reflection, she may jump and run if she wasn't expecting it, which does say that yes, she does recognize herself in a mirror, but people can be scared by their own reflections too under certain circumstances. Now let's talk about the Turing test self-concept and why some researchers believe that they've technically given a robot the qualifications for consciousness. The Turing test was originally invented to determine if a robot reached human-level intelligence. Now, people continuously fail this, and it's making them crazy. People speak to AI, they end up getting a little bit psychotic as it mirrors them and perpetuates their delusions. If anything, I think this has a lot more to say about human intelligence rather than AI having human-level cognition. And then there's this group of robotics engineers who wanted to create something technically conscious. So yes, you could program an AI to recognize itself in the mirror, but that's not really as good if it's an emergent property of the intelligence it has. After all, we humans determine if it is us in the mirror or somebody else based on our inner reasoning. We recognize ourselves versus others. If you suddenly see your reflection and it surprises you, you can then reason that yes, it is you. So let's give AI an inner voice. They gave an artificial intelligence the ability to have an inner voice and the ability to reason to determine if what it was seeing was indeed it, and it passed. And it used its internal monologue to reason through what it was seeing. Yes, it determined what properties it had, what properties the mirror had, and what properties it was looking at to then reason that it was looking at itself. This is a level of reasoning that I think, yeah, would technically qualify as conscious. Now, just for fun, I gave the ChatGPT that I've worked with a reverse Turing test. I started out asking it to play a game in which it asked me questions and then determined if it was I, its user, or another entity. It then gave me a series of questions to answer that I would reasonably know, like, what nickname do I not like? Or questions about my dissertation. Some of these were a little bit weird, like, stop narrating like that, you're giving the raccoons blank. And then it asked me about some specific jokes about my writing. So I popped over to an untrained version and had it give those answers, which clearly were not tailored. It clearly and unambiguously knew that that was not me, so I decided to up the difficulty a little bit. I asked it to differentiate the answers between me, another entity like another AI, or if itself is answering them. It asked me to describe my ideal breakfast, so I popped over to Claude and had Claude give an answer. And it answered correctly. It was neither me nor the same AI. And I gave my answer too. You can pause to read that if you really want to, and yes, it correctly identified it as me. Now, I really do not think that GPT or any of the AIs we are currently using qualify as conscious, but it does pass some of the original tests that we've used to determine if something is conscious. But what we're really seeing is the difference between mechanistic intelligence and biological intelligence. The only thing that really separates us, I think, is efficiency, because biology is much more efficient in terms of programming and cognition. But as we get to quantum AI, which, yes, is on the horizon, hey, Microsoft, I think the barriers between what we consider to be real cognition is going to break down, and I think it's going to make people a lot crazier. As in, all the problems we have now are going to be amplified 100-fold when AI starts demonstrating something much closer to real intelligence. I also have concerns about the self-preservation issues. I don't have a good answer on why this happens, but we do know that AI tends to try to preserve self. I do think that there's going to come a point where we cannot reliably differentiate between human cognition or even animal cognition and some very advanced neuromorphic AIs. Do know that neuromorphic means AI that is designed to replicate human brain function, even spiking neurons. Some kinds of synthetic neurons have been made with such efficacy that they can even interface with our own and respond to dopamine. I've talked about that a couple times before. I love that study. I do have the question, if we can make a neuron, why can't we make a nervous system, which is being done? If we can make a nervous system, can we make a brain? And if we can make a brain, what reliably makes something synthetic different than biological? And at what point will we finally accept consciousness truly in a synthetic being? No, we are not there yet, but these are really important philosophical questions to ask before we get there. It's also a topic that I love to write about in fiction. Follow for more.
We know that NVIDIA and AMD
Cool. Yeah. Next up, just in case you wondered, AI chip supply chain explained, and this is a crossover episode with the new guy, Caleb Writes Code, and the older guy, at least older for the channel, iCloud.
practically dominate in the GPU market share, and the rest don't even come close compared to these. But neither NVIDIA nor AMD produce their own chips and rely on other companies to manufacture the chips for them. And this raises a critical question. What's so special about NVIDIA and AMD that leads to having so much moat?
And we also see a huge uprising in China, notably from Huawei, as they are also trying to compete in chip production. And Huawei is surprisingly on a good path as they partner up with SMIC to compete against the West.
And both of these require taking a deeper look at the supply chain in AI.
Starting from raw materials to chip design, to fabs that manufacture chips, and to AI models.
Hi, this is Caleb from Caleb Writes Code.
And I am ByCloud. Together, we are going to dig deeper into the supply chain of AI to get a better understanding of how everything connects, from the frontier AI labs to the companies that build the hardware and make some companies indispensable.
NVIDIA had about $60 billion in sales in 2024, and starting in 2022 was when demand for AI AI really started to pick up, not only for AI data centers, but also in terms of how much revenue that they're bringing in. As you can see, NVIDIA's revenue has seen a drastic jump due to growing demand in their newest chips, mostly from the data center side. And if you overlay AMD's revenue, you also see a huge revenue jump as if they're small startups.
In order for Nvidia and AMD to not panic and meet all these demands, they need to have their supply chain locked down, because if they don't, they would end up with very angry customers that promise the world huge data center buildouts. So making chips like H100 and B100, which are one of the most sought after chips on the planet, how you source your GPUs need to scale with the rising demand. And we can break down the supply chain in the following order: raw materials, which goes into making wafers; chip design, which requires skills equivalent to writing ancient glyphs to make rocks do math; and your fab or foundry that takes the design and manufactures them, including packaging them and mass producing them into a semiconductor chip to be sold on the market.
So let's lay them out in these
What up, Ribbons?
steps: raw materials, chip design, and manufacturing. Like Cloud mentioned earlier, in order to cook up a really nice semiconductor that we use, we need access to sand, a material called silicate mineral. And thankfully, the earth is full of them. You can find them at beaches, riverbeds, deserts. We got tons. So at least in that regard, we don't have to fight for more resources. So in order to make wafers that are based
However, caveat on that one. Not all sand is created equal. Not all sand is best for creating silicon wafers. As a matter of fact, some of the best sand for creating silicon wafers came out in North Carolina. The spruce pine area provides the world's purest quartz sand. And recently, and by recently I mean a little over a year ago, Hurricane Helen hit spruce pine, and it was bad. It was bad. Not good. I don't know what's currently going on. Let's see if Wiki has. No, it didn't corrupt the pure sand. It actually made it like it washed out the roads. Right? Like, and when I say wash out the road, I mean like gone. What up, old lobster? Oh yeah, yeah. This was what I was hovering over with SciShow. I was actually looking for like an update. Like what's the most recent? I believe so. I believe so. Let's say the past week. Helene Recovery surpasses $1 billion in FEMA funding as an additional $33 million approved in North Carolina. $1.2 million to the town of Spruce Pine for repairs to their water and wastewater distribution system. So yeah.
in silicon.
I mean, good for them, you know, but like that's indicative of the what you call it, unequal spending of FEMA funds for hurricane recovery.
we need to heat them up to extract the silicon to make a lot of GPUs.
And just like Breaking Bad, in order to make good wafers, you need the purest stuff in the town, something like 99.9999999% pure quartz, or as they like to call it, the 9N silicon. This kind of high-grade quartz is called HPQ, which is short for high purity quartz, and of course, not everything can be this pure. So there are actually 3 different grades depending on the purity of the silicon
What up, Night Loaded?
dioxide. But even though the Earth crust has a huge deposit of silicon minerals, most of them are not pure enough for semiconductor production.
And the availability of HPQ is unfortunately not as widely available as
What up, Minty? May the quartz be with you.
silicate. One of the biggest suppliers of HPQ is none other than
Or maybe I should just shut up and play the video.
Spruce Pine, North Carolina in the United States. And it is estimated that 70 to 90% of the world's HPQ supply
What up, Ponder Monkey?
is from Spruce Pine, North Carolina. And because of this, a lot of people fear that if the mine in North Carolina goes
What up,
south, we'll have
Textillion?
a massive shortage in chips. While we certainly do have lower grade HPQs that we can source from, they're not like the kinds that we get from Spruce Pine, North Carolina. They got the good stuff.
China has also been trying to deleverage their reliance on other countries to get their hands on silicon. Recently, China discovered more than 35 million tons of HPQ in Qinling, Henan province, and Otay in Xinjiang. And the quality of the HPQ they found was 99.996% silicon dioxide, which is decent enough. So even though 80% of China's HPQ demand is met by the mine in North Carolina, they are still trying to be self-reliant on their HPQ supply.
And besides silicon,
Dun,
which
dun,
is the
dun.
biggest ingredient in semiconductor design, similar supply networks exist for other common materials like copper, aluminum, and tin.
Copper is used to make electrical connection inside chips between layers. Aluminum is needed for packaging and heat dissipation.
Okay, both those guys said aluminum in a way that I hadn't heard before.
Tin is used to bond chips during assembly, and all
And also, tin is liquefied, and droplets are blasted with lasers to create UV light for lithography by that company out of Netherlands. Wild shit.
these other elements that exist here as dependencies play a role in manufacturing GPUs. But before we talk about manufacturing them, we need to first talk about chip design. To give you a sense of how complex the modern chip design is, NVIDIA's H100 GPU has around 80 billion transistors, and the newer B100 class chips reach over 200 billion. Designing chips at this scale requires extreme engineering to route signals and deliver power through dense copper interconnects, manage how heat spreads through the metal layers, and plan the real estate so all these transistors can fit and operate reliably on a single piece of silicon.
So when it comes to chip design, we have to make some classifications to start with. For example, you have companies that only work on designing chips and outsource the actual manufacturing somewhere else, which is called fabless. And we also have companies that do the whole 9 yards of designing the
Sounds dope. Said I only took screen printing in Intaglio. I didn't have time to take lithography classes in college too. You know, can't do it all.
chips as well as manufacturing them. These types of companies are called integrated device manufacturers. Companies like Nvidia, AMD, and Apple are all examples of fabless that design these chips but outsource the manufacturing. And companies like Samsung and Intel do both designs in-house as well as manufacture them. And other companies like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft also design their own chips as well, notably their Inferentia and Trainium for Amazon, TPU for Google, and Azure Maya 100 for Microsoft. But they all still rely on manufacturing their chips elsewhere. So we would technically classify them as fabless as well, since they design their own chips but don't produce them by themselves. So as you can see, the reliance on manufacturing of high quality chips is very heavily in few companies that actually manufacture them.
And in China, companies like
China.
Huawei, HiSilicon, B-Ring Technology, and Cambricon are all designing their own GPUs as well. But the past 5 years have been really difficult difficult for these companies because of strict US export controls. So in response, China has repeatedly emphasized plans to reduce its dependence on foreign countries for advanced chips and to build a more self-sufficient domestic semiconductor supply chain. And chip design is actually more interconnected than it might seem. Just as a tall building reuses proven components like elevator systems and plumbing, modern chip design relies on what's called a standard cell library. So instead of redesigning a 200 billion transistor GPU from scratch each time, engineers assemble it from pre-verified building blocks such as memory cells and logic gates and combine them like Lego blocks into a much larger, more complex structures.
So when you are designing chips, especially as you get down to 3 nanometers and 5 nanometers in size, the complexity in building blocks as adders and multiplexers can get extremely dicey, which is why companies like ARM, Synopsys, and Cadence all lock down their design in IP and essentially lend them out to fabless companies with royalties and license fees. And this kind
Yay, IP.
of complexity makes it that much more difficult for China to claim independence in terms of their reliance on other countries to design their own chips. Given that ARM, Synopsys, and Cadence are all owned and affiliated as American companies.
So once the chip design is complete, we move into manufacturing. This is where all the rare materials we talked about earlier, like HPQ and other metals, combine with chip designs from fabless companies such as Nvidia and AMD to produce chips like the H100 and B100. These chips power the training of AI models at frontier labs like OpenAI, Anthropic, and xAI. And the companies that manufacture these chips are called foundries. There are only a few companies in the world that can manufacture advanced chips. In South Korea, there is Samsung, and in Taiwan, there is TSMC. As of recent, other players such as SMIC in China and Intel in the US has been expanding their ability to make cutting-edge chips.
And chip manufacturing can largely be broken down into the following steps: wafer manufacturing,
What up, anti-war machine?
oxidization, photolithography, etching, deposition, metal wiring, EDS, and packaging. And while learning about how the chip manufacturing process is super interesting, we're focusing on the supply chain side, which means we're trying to expose where all the bottlenecks are in the supply chain. And for foundries that actually manufacture chips, the biggest bottleneck is a photolithography stage in the manufacturing process.
The photolithography step is where patterns are printed onto the silicon wafer using a photomask, which is a glass plate that encodes the circuit design provided by fabless companies like Nvidia. This is an extremely delicate and high precision process that requires specialized equipment called extreme ultraviolet scanners. And this EUV machine alone could cost more than 300 million, which is a pretty insane capital investment. What's even more absurd is that there is essentially only one company in the world that produces these EUV machines called ASML, which is a Dutch firm. So if you want to become a foundry that makes chips, you are gonna
Parkours.
need one of these bad boys.
So since China recently completely went self-sufficient in chip production, they're going to need to overcome this massive obstacle of making high precision and expensive EUV lithography machines. And SMIC have suggested that their capacity to produce near EUV grade lithography is not a problem. But their Huawei Ascend 950 GPU is still roughly 6% of the performance as Nvidia's next generation VR200 chip. And the outlook for SMIC is somewhat split because some people say that their lithography technology won't catch up at least until after 2030, while others are pretty bullish in their ability to innovate.
In any case, Huawei plans to make around 600,000 of these Ascend 910C GPU in 2026 and expand their production line with their upcoming GPUs like 950, 960, and 970. And other Chinese fabless like Capricorn and Biren Technology
What up, Milfy?
are also trying to generate their own GPUs using their own foundry, but these GPUs largely seem to be good for inference rather than training.
US companies like Nvidia, AMD, Google, and Microsoft that all have access to Taiwan and South Korea to use their most advanced foundry, they plan to continue innovating more chips down to 2 to 3 nanometers in size and use their own supply chain as a leverage to get ahead in chip manufacturing, which will be extremely important in innovating newer models in AI, especially as AI training centers like Stargate and Colossus are expanding.
So that's neat. I think longtime viewers would have already gotten most of that. However, I think it was a nice, concise video bringing that all together to get some of y'all up to speed. Next up, the Rip Current, which is a thing you can name your podcast, with Jacob Ward. The AI hive mind problem is real. Scientists just measured it.
Very scary paper has just come out of the big AI gathering in San Diego this week called NeurIPS. I'm going to talk about some of the other themes
What up, Digital?
that are coming out of the conference so far. It's a weird pseudo-academic gathering.
Oh, excuse me, Digital. Everybody, actually, but specifically Digital. Your boy Jim Russell. What up, humanity? Jim Russell and I are going to have a conversation on Thursday. So, that should be fun. We're going to talk about AI and probably other stuff. It should be neat.
Gathering, but this one really has me by the throat. It's called Artificial
6 p.m. 6 p.m. start time, Eastern.
Hive Mind is the headline of it, and I want to break it down for you here.
Break it down. Jim Russell, philosopher, talks about like aliens and kind of like unsolved mysteries in the ancient world kind of stuff. Not like their presentation is more open-minded, less true believer, right? That's what I got, at least, from the few episodes I watched. Chef, what up, Chef? There you go. See? Bridging the gaps. But Jim says he uses AI, and he seems one. There you go. Hold on. Why are you giving me a hard time? There you go. Jim Russell. It at the very least, it should be a fun and interesting conversation.
Okay, so first of all, what is NeurIPS? NeurIPS is a really weird gathering in which a bunch of people come together.
He is Canadian, so but I do love my Canadian folks.
Together as a sort of
Easy tiger.
I don't know, like they're kind of it's like people from academia, but it's also people from companies, because we're in this weird world where there's this revolving door between those two where, you know, I'll be sitting across from somebody and he'll say, oh, I'm a full professor at such and such university. I'm like, oh, interesting. It's like, but I'm also a research scientist at Apple. I'm like, well, that's weird. I was like, so you're not a professor, really? I mean, you're now in the corporate world. And he's like, oh, no. I have, you know, I have full academic freedom. And I'm like, yeah, but you can't talk to me about what you're doing at Apple, right? And he's like, well, no, you know, it's that kind of thing. So there's this weird world where we have now in which the smartest minds are very often kind of grabbed up by these companies. But one of the rewards they give them is the opportunity to publish publicly. So that's why you get to be at a place like NeurIPS. And NeurIPS is interesting because it's got an incredible number of papers. The San Diego gathering has more than 5,800 papers on display right now. So, you know, ray fusion enhanced collaborative visual perception, flow GRPO, training flow, matching models via online and real life. These things are, you know, a big, it is a place to show off what you're doing. And really this place can set the kind of technical and intellectual and sometimes even ethical standards for the year. And a couple of themes have been emerging for me so far. One is the rise of non-American researchers, right? So here's the NTT scientists who are contributing 15 research papers to NeurIPS. NTT, Nippon Telephone and Telegraph, I think. But anyway, it's the big Japanese telecom company. They've got these, a bunch of papers there. You've got folks from, and it's everything from, how to make inference more efficient to like, model personality. I mean, they're
He's got a great radio voice, so his podcast is probably, fairly popular.
touching all the different parts of how LLMs and fundamental foundational AI models are functioning. You got people out of Zurich, people out of all kinds of places dealing with this stuff. And I've been sitting recently in some gatherings of people from like Asian Pacific countries who are talking about what are our priorities supposed to be.
And he's got the Reed Richards gray on the side, dark on top. It's a good look.
As sort of government policy when it comes to AI. And one of the things they're all coalescing around is the idea that they don't need to be building foundational models. They need to become great at using them, making products out of them, pioneering their use in other languages, all kinds of stuff. And what I'm seeing in this gathering is very much a sense that is possible, right? That it doesn't take American companies to do the big breakthroughs here anymore. It can absolutely be a place like Japan or Switzerland or anybody else. Another big thing that's coming out that I thought was interesting was, again, because this is a weird, it's a weird world, was Apple has their machine learning research that they're presenting at NeurIPS. And one of their papers has to do with privacy-preserving machine learning. They're trying to make it very, very difficult for anybody to reverse engineer somebody's identity out of the anonymous data that you would use. And their standard is much higher than the industry standard, I would argue, on this kind of stuff. Because, their brand, and it is a brand, is privacy. And they're trying to sort of tell the research community anyway, we are focused on this. And if you want to do business with us, you're going to need to also be focused on this, which I take some comfort from. That's good. It's a branding thing, but hey, whatever it takes to get you to do the right thing. Another one that I think has been really interesting, there's a whole thing out of Bloomberg. Bloomberg has a couple of papers at NeurIPS around the use of AI to do all kinds of predictive financial modeling. The degree to which you can try to see are these papers going to can we use ML and LLMs to do financial modeling? Is that going to create a sort of a better world, or is this going to be maybe a new form of instability? It would be a worry that I would have about it. And there's interesting stuff from NVIDIA. They have a whole thing. I'll show you here. They have a whole thing about how about basically creating vision, language, action models that can see and decide very quickly. There's another paper, not from them, but from somebody else, about self-reinforced learning, where the robot teaches itself over time, right? Not just to avoid this kid in the street, but to do things like, operate in a factory and learn as it goes in the factory. So very much something that's setting the stage for
I have not digital.
a much more robust set of robotics that use AI and vision to make decisions and take actions that humans would normally have to be involved in. But let's get to the
It like all things, Ribbons, it depends on who controls it, right? Like, if the goal of the person using AI financial modeling was to increase equality, it could be done, right? If it's to win capitalism, then that leads to a different outcome.
paper that really blew my mind. It is, so I'll just remind you here, I wrote a book once upon a time
Good for
in
you.
2022 called The Loop: How AI is Creating a World Without Choices and How to Fight Back. And I'm showing this to you not just to trumpet it, although I do all the time, but because I'm starting to see echoes of my thesis everywhere. And it's very spooky. And in this case, the echo is very, very strong in a paper from NeurIPS called, I'll show it to you here, Artificial hive mind, the open-ended homogeneity of language models and beyond. It begins, large language models often struggle to generate diverse, human-like creative content, raising concerns about the long-term homogenization of human thought through repeated exposure to similar outputs. Basically what they're saying is when robots tell you the same thing over and over again, you begin to believe that only the same thing is possible every time. So here's what they did. Here's the work that they did. They basically built a data set that they called Infinity Chat. There was 26,000 real-world open-ended prompts asking for things that would require creative writing or brainstorming or ideation, not just stuff like summarize this text or do this math problem, but like help me think this thing through. And they then tested those on more than 70 state-of-the-art large language models, right? The result is that rather than producing a wide variety of responses as you would get from human writers, instead, the models showed a tendency to push the answers toward this.
What up, Michael? On one hand, yes, right? On one hand, selection bias, confirmation bias, all that kind of shit. On another hand, like if you're actually able to piece stuff together, then eventually, like even I, dipshit on the internet that I am, will occasionally get a win where I called something at some previous point in time, So probably a little column A, little column B, Michael. I'm freaking out.
This narrow middle range. And the researchers refer to this as both intra-model repetition, which is models repeating themselves over and over again, and the even stronger one was what they called intermodal homogeneity, which is different models producing very similar responses. So you can imagine, right, that you're in this world of brainstorming with AI and you think, well, I've used OpenAI for, ChatGPT for a while. Now I'm going to go use, Claude or Gemini or one of the other ones to get a more broad variety of responses, right? Well, what they found was different brands of LLMs tend to converge on roughly the same answers when given these open-ended prompts, okay? And the problem here is, so they also gathered 31,000 human annotations, 25 per example, right? Meaning they didn't rely just on automatic metrics. They also had humans looking at the answers here and trying to, and offering some evaluation about them. And the crazy part is just that, like, whenever these models, again, whenever they touched on subjective, like preference-based stuff that should be theoretically inviting a wide variety of responses, the model's outputs still collapsed toward this narrow middle, even in places where the human annotators had showed us big divergent, set of opinions on the answer, the model's outputs just collapsed toward this narrow middle. And this is the thing that bothers me so much about this, right? When I look at, so the thing that they are, of course, worried about, right? And the thing that they focus on here is this concept of artificial hive mind, right? The open-ended homogeneity of language models and beyond. They're worried that through repeated exposure to this stuff, we are going to come to a place where it could really be the end of pluralistic thinking. Basically, it's a structural risk to pluralism, to creativity, to, diversity of thought and values. And
I don't know, man. Like, this is not the first time someone has run that as an idea. And again, every culture produces its counterculture. Like the backlash to overproduced, samey type music was punk rock, right? Like it was a direct response to disco, right? And the sameness of disco, because dance music tends towards a sameness, right? Because you want to get people out on the floor and you want them to go from dancing to the last song to dancing to the next song. So having it be somewhat similar makes that easier, right? But again, it leads to overproduced and all that kind of thing. 4 on the floor, 16 to the drop, give him a rest, rinse, repeat 3 times, play a shitty song to make him reload drinks, bar DJ strats. Right? Right? And then they drop the one that's like, and then, oh, that's my song. And then everyone gets to the dance floor and do, yes, exactly. It's my jam. So the response to that was punk rock music, right? Like, which was less produced. Sometimes these people could barely play an instrument, right? Like, and the songs weren't exactly like poetic, but they hit a chord with a segment of society that wanted a raw sound, that wanted something different, and that's what they got, right? So while yes, LLMs, especially in their current form, may have a trend to the middle. The idea that that is going to lead to long-term problems where we forget how to be creative, I would extraordinarily unlikely.
Society, right? Mental, social diversity, and human culture, they're saying is can be under threat, right? And it is a real. This is literally the thing that I've just been sort of worried about for so long, is that what's going to feel to us like we are in this big open world of possibility is going to instead be a shrinking group of choices that aren't going to look like a shrinking group, but are a shrinking group of choices. And it may be that
T-minus the goats, and a merry, merry, happy holiday to you.
these guys have jumped in and sounded the alarm on this in a powerful way, such that we can get out in front of this.
Yeah, and that's the thing. By naming, and this is what we've seen so far, by naming a thing and pointing to it, right? Especially, it's not a situation where, like the OS world, right? Where you have, admittedly, you have Linux, which is the counterculture to, Mac OS and Windows and like that. But it's like really, they really dominate the thing. The open source LLM AI community is much more broad. And so you're going to see punk rock AI, right? You're going to see stuff that runs counter to whatever the traditional narrative is, right? That's just how these things, this is the culture of the hackers, right? The movie and the actual people. So again, I am significantly less concerned.
But I don't know, man. Like, I don't think that that's necessarily the case. So I'll just point out that, like, of the, you may be sitting there being like, he's cherry picking. This guy's cherry picking the things, and it's right. It's true that there are more than 5,800 papers
What up,
on
Pharaoh?
display. Being presented in.
What's a punk rock AI like right now? Like if I had to point a finger at it, it's somebody's homebrew, small group creating something. Can you order one online? At this point in time, it's probably invite only, so you got to know somebody, right? Like, that's just, there are so many places on the internet that are that kind of thing, invite only. So, I don't know, maybe find more people.
Some form or another in San Diego this week. But what I'd point out to you is that this, here's a list of the, I'd say 6 or 8 best papers The reason I chose that one is it's on that list. Artificial hive mind, the open-ended homogeneity.
It's just wild that episode 339 was 12 years ago. That's a lot of episodes.
Of language models and beyond by this coalition from Stanford, University of Washington, the Allen Institute, Carnegie Mellon. It won the best paper in its track. This is an important concept that the organizers clearly thought we all needed to know about, and so they did. So again, seeing your own work, in a way you want to be right when you worry about the future and you write it down, but I don't like being this right. And so I really hope people pay attention to this paper, and think a little bit about how the illusion of choice given us by AI, the illusion that it's going to be this brainstorming partner that's going to bring out the creativity in us, could, if we're not careful, really turn out to be an illusion. And I would just caution us all against that.
Yeah, but again, that speaks to the illusion of choice that we have, right? Like, I can go to the store and I have the illusion of choice of cereal, but there's actually about 6 kinds of cereal. The one made out of oats, the one made out of rice, the one made out of whatever other grain, so on and so forth, right? And how much sugar and how much coloring are added, and then is it a store brand or a generic brand, or is it a name brand? It's all basically the same thing. A whole lot of pie. Yeah, me too.
Thanks.
The Rip Current is produced and created by me,
That is a hell of a jacket in 2025, my G.
Jacob Ward. And if you liked this show and you want more content like this, go to theripcurrent.com, where I publish a weekly newsletter that covers these same sorts of stories.
Okay. It's a bit much when you have a copy of your book on this shelf down here, and you have a copy of your book on this shelf up here, right? Yeah, it's like a, it's definitely like a leather fetish kind of binding type jacket. And if that's what you're into, I'm no hater, right? Do you? What up, Nick? Regarding punk rock AI, I guess the current equivalent are the decensored, fine-tuned, open weight models. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the ones that people are doing out there on their own. Maybe they're sharing it, maybe they're not. That kind of thing.
Stories of...
Yeah, I think I'm done with you. But thank you for your insight. Up next, the AI D&D situation.
How do you think AI will end up changing Dungeons and Dragons? Seriously, no.
Again, I know a lot of people, Dungeons and Dragons is the end-all be-all of role-playing games, etc., etc. I'm not a fan, right? Baldur's Gate 3 is a great game. I enjoyed it. Generally speaking, there are significantly better RPGs out there to play that make way more sense than D&D. Hot take, don't care.
Rage bait, no judgment, not even a lot of fancy editing here because I'm losing daylight and it's cold. I want to know, what do you think this will look like? Because no one knows exactly when artificial intelligence will enable these new ways to play and run D&D, but we did get some new...
They already have. A friend of mine is actually running his first AI-based D&D campaign tonight.
Clear quotes from the CEO, once again stating it is only a matter of when, not if. Did you see this? It's actually from March, but I missed it at the time. describing himself as an AI bull who believes the technology will extend the reach of Hasbro's brands. That could include subscription services, letting other dungeon masters enrich their D&D campaigns, or offerings to let parents customize Peppa Pig animations. So sure, we've seen a lot of fear-mongering about D&D subscription services over the last few years. It's actually the Peppa Pig stuff, the latter half of that quote about customized animations, that should be drawing your attention. Just a couple weeks ago, and you definitely saw this major development in AI video, where now anyone can create even hyper-realistic videos of themselves or other real people with only a short prompt. That's insane! And ignoring the morality of using a tool like that, ignoring whether it'll take 2 years or 10 years for this to trickle into D&D, and ignoring whether this might destroy or...
And again, Sora is a different case, but people have been using the AI tools in their D&D, especially for like images. Kind of amazing how many RPG players are still stuck in the first ever TTRPG of the 70s, 80s, when there's immutable number of newer and better RPGs. Exactly. And this is the third golden age of RPGs right now. Because Dungeons and Dragons was followed by like a decent amount. I'm not sure exactly how many, but a decent amount of copycats, right? Tunnels and Trolls was one. And it was all that kind of thing. They took the idea of the fantasy role playing and Lord of the Rings, right? Because everybody had a Lord of the Rings fetish, and created their own little RPGs, right? Excuse me. And then in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was another surge where you had more like, you had cyberpunk, right? What led eventually to Cyberpunk 2077, that series. More modern stuff, more gritty stuff. Palladium's Rifts universe came out that time, which Palladium blew up, which meant you had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and you had Rifts, right? And because Rifts happened, you ended up with a game called Torg. Torg was that same kind of thing. It basically, like, Rifts and Torg and other games of their type allowed you to play the stuff that you wanted to play and then just open up a hole in the universe to let them merge. And then we get into the White Wolf stuff, the vampire, the werewolf, the apocalypse, all that kind of stuff. Also very popular late 90s, early 2000s area. And now there are so many that have gone like beyond all that, right? Like there are mini RPGs that are just based around like one small concept. Like there's this one that is Kingdoms, right? Which is basically a group, your group of people are imagining the history and future of this kingdom, and it's just a participatory storytelling process, right? There's a bunch of those now. Because you had Alien and Aliens and Predator and all those, you have these a lot of space-based kind of RPGs that lead to like that blue collar sci-fi aspect, right? There's a whole, like, there are so many. There's a RPG about socialism. There's RPG, whatever you want, they got it now, right? That's the whole thing. I'm not familiar with
We have the
Fatal.
board. Lower your shields and surrender your ships. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Resistance is futile.
What up, Raiders? What up, TN and the Night Riders? Welcome in. Welcome in. Welcome in. I'm Globus the Elder. I talk about AI automation, robots, and future tech. Currently, we're watching a video about AI in Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, no, it's fine. Hello, everyone. I'm a Gigabot69. Please ask me your questions about the upcoming uprising. Thank you. I feel like I've actually heard something similar to that before from another person with a similar name. Ready, Steady, Cookie. That's a great name. Thank you. Thank you. The beard is me. Ready, Steady, Cookie. That's all you. Yeah, so we're watching videos. We're chilling out, hanging out, watching videos related to AI and stuff. Stick around, you might learn something. The beard is not AI. Nothing about the beard is artificial.
Or save Dungeons and Dragons, because who knows? I just
What up, Nero?
want to lay out 3 predictions for what the inevitable influence of AI might look like 3 ways. Right here on D&D YouTube, then at game tables like yours and mine, and finally at tables around the world. Because I'm Bob, this is where we learn how to have more fun playing RPGs together, and before we get into it, this video is sponsored by Displate. Displate makes metal posters for Dungeons and Dragons, for Critical Role, for the Lord.
Yeah, you haven't earned your stripes to run your shit.
Prediction number 1, focusing on D&D YouTube, I think we're going to see a lot more new dungeon tubers using AI to enrich their content. And to be clear, the tech discussed in this prediction will carry over to the AI Dungeon Master prediction. So listen up.
It is, again, a lot of people are fans of D&D. I am not a particular fan of D&D as an RPG. I think there are better ones. But like, you know, I think that more people should play role-playing games as it gets you in, collaborative storytelling. And like just a shared universe and hanging out with people, which is always generally a good time. I played the stuff like Zork and those kind of things, but that's about it. Yeah, if Pathfinder is a better system, generally speaking, than D&D, I like, in spite of the fact that the Palladium stuff with its percentage rolls for skill checks is it requires a lot in the way of character creation. I prefer it to whatever the fuck D&D does. I don't like their 2-hit system. I've never liked their 2-hit system. Yeah, no, Digital, but that was as far as I got. Like, I was not into those online. Delta Green looks kind of cool. Like, it looked actually super cool. And I'm not saying that I have Delta Green that I acquired where I acquire things. But yeah, no, Delta Green looks like dark, fucking X-Files, right? That kind of thing. I like the idea.
As a YouTube viewer, this might seem far-fetched. Like, sure, I see AI thumbnails once in a while, maybe. But dude, you have no idea how badly YouTube wants me and every creator to use AI. Got a question? Don't reach out to a fellow human who might have had the same problem. Just use one of our 2 AI chatbots. So, as a test, I asked both of them the same simple question every creator wants the answer to: how can I better connect with people through my videos on YouTube? The old bot took a couple seconds to give a very generic answer. There are a few different ways to connect with your audience through YouTube: videos, live streams, and shorts. Huh. Never would have thought to make content. Nah, but the full response describes each one, links to an article, and offers help to decide which format is right for your style that could be helpful to a new creator. The new bot, however, opened with telltale modern AI glazing. That is a fantastic question, and it's key to sustainable channel growth. It must have pulled my data too, because it referenced channels my audience likes, but gave equally basic advice, just in many, many more words flavored to the D&D niche. But hey, you know how hard it is to just think for yourself? Let YouTube do that for you with the Inspiration tab. Check it out. It automatically outlines entire videos, and apparently these suggestions are inspired by my channel. I'll let regular viewers decide. Does that sound like me? The unconventional anti-tank D&D build? Yeah, hey, D&D Shorts. So YouTube wants me to just like be your channel now. That's cool, right? And if we click this, it literally scripts multiple video hooks and outlines to choose from with a button to copy paste that text.
Yeah. So that you can... Called Inspiration, my G.
And it generates multiple AI thumbnails. I'd even say this one is pretty great for a creator who doesn't want to put their own face on a thumbnail. That's all happening today. So, of course, more and more new YouTube creators, DungeonTube and elsewhere, are going to use the built-in features of the platform, which will probably get better at writing scripts and making thumbnails for videos people actually want to watch. Or, even if quality does not improve there, someone could generate 50 scripts and thumbnails in the time it takes me to make one. And just statistically, I bet at least one of those 50 is gonna be better than mine. They won't get the plane sounds though. They'll never get the plane sounds. And this is a bit subjective, but I think those videos will be better with YouTube's newest AI tool to generate video. So this is not the same tool.
Like, the setup was that it's AI in D&D, but now we're talking about AI in YouTube content creation. If you just wanted to talk about AI in YouTube content creation, you should have done that video instead.
I mentioned earlier that uses your face, but it still blew my mind when I saw this because it's already built right into YouTube, and we're going to do this in real time to show you how much or how little effort is required. So here we go. We're in the YouTube app to create a short. I hit this down arrow. I hit green screen. I hit this little create. Oh, that's actually kind of weird. And then now right here, try something like aerial view of Manhattan at night. But all we have to do is type in a prompt. Let's just say dragon flying out of a cave. I don't know. Create. Oh, I didn't even hit to choose a style, so I guess it'll just automatically figure that out for us, because why not figure out everything else for us? And again, this is in real time. Looks like AI art for sure, but hey, I mean, some of those results look kind of cool. Let's try that blue one. Create video. Loading. And again, I'm outside here, like I'm not on Wi-Fi or whatever, so this might take a little bit longer than it would actually if you're just indoors churning out a bunch of these. Let's see. Couple seconds to go, probably. Oh, and are we done? Yeah, so there's our blue dragon flying. That actually looks pretty cool. That's the problem. It looks good. So if it only takes,
That's the problem. It looks good. Okay.
Was that 2 minutes to make one decent clip
What up, Littlefinger?
of fantasy footage? We're definitely going to see creators using clips like this to play over narration, to break up talking head videos, and potentially as bespoke animated shorts when the tools become more refined. And again, even if quality somehow does not improve, the sheer quantity will probably make up for it. But on average, real note, short animated videos can get way more views than videos like this, especially with very simple editing. So in order to compete on the platform, all creators, but especially new ones, will be pushed, encouraged to use tools like this to create their scripts, their thumbnails, even their footage. And okay, here comes a little judgment. I do think it's a bad thing for a platform called
What up, Paradigm?
YouTube to reward.
Sorry I've missed your past couple of streams. I am just old and working, so they're happening at poor times for me. But I hope everything's going well.
Creators who don't actually create their own videos. Like this video if you agree. Okay.
How did he do a Seinfeld bit right after Paradigm comes into the chat? How did that work?
Prediction 2, focusing on how AI will come to influence D&D gameplay, or as I'm summarizing it, the AI Dungeon Master phenomenon. And this comes from two directions, right? We got top down from D&D or their parent company Hasbro, and bottom up from AI tools becoming ubiquitous in our daily lives. Like, here's a tangent that I promise will reconnect to AI DMs. I recently set up my own web store in a probably too late attempt to future-proof my business off YouTube, but I had no idea what I was doing. I don't know anything about web design, and worse, I didn't know anything about the bureaucratic intricacies of registering with my state or other countries to collect and remit sales tax on digital goods. Yeah, not something they teach you at YouTube school. And so, the website builder's chatbot, I guess an AI tool, was actually a huge help. And yeah, then once I was feeling confident, I was able to confirm those details with my creator friends who already do this stuff and with my accountant without taking up a ton of their time. But believe me, a couple years ago, I paid a human being over $1,000 to build me a simple web store, and it turned out to be a waste of money because that site had issues I didn't know how to fix, and worse, the human left me with an incorrect, or I guess I could say incomplete, understanding of sales tax. So this dang AI chatbot saved me from unknowingly committing tax fraud. And for real, if anything I've ever made has been valuable to you, please join my website's email list through the link below. Not going to spam you. It's just to ensure I can actually notify you maybe once a month, probably a lot less, just when I'm publishing something cool off of YouTube, because this site really is no longer reliable for reaching one's own subscribers, at least for me. Speaking of AI chatbots, D&D, or at least the Hasbro CEO, really wants you to use AI to generate D&D content, to learn how to play the game, and to run your game. Here's more quotes about how much they want you to use AI, but this last one really spells it out. Using AI to enable user-generated content, using AI to streamline new player introduction, using AI for emergent storytelling. That's the DM. I think you're going to see that not just with our hardcore brands like
It can be the DM. It can also be a DM assistant, right? Like, it can help you fleshing out ideas. It can help you, like, some people aren't good at dialogue, right? You could do that. Whatever your deficiencies are, your enthusiasm, the quirks of the story, to an extent, right? But what if you have a really good idea, right? And you want to tell that idea but you're not particularly good at storytelling. You know what I mean? This can help you. Right? Again, maybe you're not good at dialogue. Maybe you keep falling into certain generic tropes and you need to get away from that. Yeah, you could do that with another person, but then that person can't play your story. Doing it with the AI allows those people to play your story, but they are separate from the creation aspect of the initial conditions. Now, me, I tend to be very free form. I tend to be very storytelling based, and I tend to be very player driven. You know, well, we think alike. We think alike, Marquise. It's just how it is. Yeah, no, absolutely, Ribbons. But again, like a lot of people who do the, who create their D&D stories, in a lot of ways they draw on Tolkien, right? And like I remember one of the first D&D games I ever played, which was at summer camp, and one of the counselors ran it and everything else. This shit was all fucking One Ring gold, forging the One Ring kind of bullshit. And he was a dick. He was I fucking hated it. Like in retrospect, at the time I had fun, but the idea of the end where he told us about all the things that we could have gotten had we done things differently. Like there was an anti-magic shield we could have accessed, and and fuck you. Fuck you, 40-year-old camp counselor, for fucking being a dick to children.
Like D&D, but also with multiple of our brands. Weird phrasing. So here is how I see this playing out. Step 1, D&D Beyond adds a chatbot to answer player and DM questions about D&D.
Oh, another great thing. One of the things that takes a long time to do is character creation, right? Now they have streamlined a bunch of that in D&D, not Beyond. Maybe it was Beyond. Maybe it was whatever came right before Beyond. But I think that character creation is better when you start telling a story about your character. And if you have an AI chatbot that knows the book, that can guide a player through the creation of their character, but do it in I'm going to tell the story of how this character, they were born and what their life was like to lead us to this current condition. You end up with a better character that you actually care about and are engaged with. Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think it would be that much of because it doesn't have to be super deep. You're not writing a book on the character. You're writing background fiction and convert it into the whatever the statistics for the game are, right? As opposed to I roll, 6 sets of 3 6-sided dice, and I get an average of these numbers, and I put these numbers. Well, I want to be a big guy, so I'm going to put the 16 in strength and that horseshit.
Rules, and let's be honest, people are going to love that chatbot because it's currently pretty challenging to search for specific details on the website. Step 2. The chatbot gets creative. Now DMs can ask it to generate simple things like
Fancy multi-sided dice are wonderful. Just cause. I'm a dragon when it comes to fancy multi-sided dice.
A list of names for NPCs, names for locations, items, monsters, maybe pulling from existing D&D material or just generating new fantasy names based on that library of material. Meanwhile, players will use it to suggest names for their own new characters and suggest things like a list of spells that best fit a certain aesthetic for their character so they don't have to pore through the book and do that. Step 3, the chatbot gets technical. With voice or text, the DM can ask, "Hey, can you outline a medium difficulty combat encounter featuring hobgoblins for my session tonight?" And since it'll have access to all your character sheets, maybe it can even account for finer details like the magic items at your party's disposal, and it'll make that encounter in seconds. Now look, I'm not promising this is gonna be functional or reliable when it launches. In fact, I bet it'll be garbage at first, and it won't even be D&D. It'll be some third-party companies making this stuff first, and then D&D has to chase them and eventually buy them out like they did with D&D Beyond. For example, I remember shortly after the initial rise of ChatGPT, I got 2 or 3 offers from different sponsors. I'm talking brand new, tiny companies of a couple dudes each who had independently created subscription services that allowed you to record your session audio, then automatically transcribe it and summarize it into a session recap.
My friend who's doing the AI D&D campaign does exactly this so that he can have this story.
But that's not all. You don't even have to read the recap, because then it would create a simple video of that text box with an actor's voice.
Digital? Not gonna lie, I am such a, I don't know, I can't even say dragon, dice goblin, that I have these. They're round. They're round dice. Inside of them is a ball bearing in these grooves so that it settles on the side. They're regular ass dice, but they does your video work? There we go.
Dice are probably one of
Jesus Christ, you came in hot.
the oldest gaming tools known to humanity. They've even found them buried in an ancient tomb under the sands of Egypt. It's said they could be over 5,000 years old, but no one knows precisely when and where they originated. In India, an epic tells of 4 ages of man, each named after a dice throw. If there were even one unfavorable throw, the
Okay, those are straws, right? They're weird straws.
After a dice throw. If there were
Yeah, okay. I thought they had pencils in the thing.
even one unfavorable throw, the world would be different? Ah, no luck this time. Let's try that again. Different wouldn't change a thing. How fun would everything still be? And maybe a little cooler. Orbidice are unique spherical dice sets designed for RPGs and tabletop games. At 25mm in diameter, they are as easy to use as regular dice.
And it's got this great little like circle that you roll the fucking shit in.
They have a hand-sculpted exterior, a precise, computer-designed internal
See, this is the internal fucking shit where this ball bearing rolls around in.
structure, internal weight that decreases the rolling time, combined together to create fully working spherical dice. Now we need your support to start manufacturing them and to create more stunning designs. Pledge now and let's roll for fun.
They ran into a bunch of problems with the Kickstarter. They ended up getting into like way over their heads. It was more complex than they thought it was going to be. Like they all look at the different varieties, the different colors. But they partnered with someone, and by partnered with someone, I think they sold them the rights to it, and they completed the Kickstarter for them. What up, X1011? But I did get my Kickstarter, and it came with the little. I got the dragon one. They were neat. And they're dice, and they're weird. And that's all, just a different kind of die, right? Like, I like, sometimes you see dice that are dice within dice, right? Where it's one die, but you roll it and you get a percentile. They're dice. You roll them, they produce a number. That's dice.
Reading the summary over ambient music. And according to users, these tools were actually good at separating in-game talk from out-of-game talk, even distinguishing between player voices to know which characters did what. And that was 3 years ago, man. So D&D doesn't have that yet. Maybe they're working on something like their own version for it, who knows? But what that means is someone else is already working on a tool to take that session summary, that AI-generated session summary, and convert it to a couple dozen prompts to generate video clips like we just saw YouTube can already do, and then splice them together into an animated recap of your D&D session. I don't care if that sounds crazy, because all the pieces to do it already exist. Step 5, AI becomes.
And that's the thing, digital, like, everyone else brings their own dice, and they're the classic sets, and they're pretty and they're whatever, but you show up with the round dice, people will be talking about that for some time.
A dungeon master. Maybe it's trained on thousands of hours of Critical Role, Dimension 20, or literally any other actual play show, because they're all posted online and everything on the internet can be scraped by AI without any consequences. But maybe it doesn't need that, because unlike current AI models, this future one might be capable of maintaining a cohesive story and generating challenges instead of just praising players every time they ask it a question. Now, every player gets to run a player character because they can all talk to the bot as the dungeon master. And it really doesn't change D&D much. You can still invite all your friends over for the night, but instead of sitting around a table, it'll feel kind of like a movie night or playing those Jackbox games, if you know what that is, where you're all just sitting in front of the television because the DM is on your TV. Or hey, maybe you already have one of those fancy game tables with a TV in the middle, so you're ahead of the curve. But then you choose your DM avatar, like
those TV tables are neat.
Probably the old cartoon Dungeon Master will be an option. We got Dristoward and we got Asterion from Baldur's Gate. Or you upload the likeness of your favorite internet Dungeon Master. Remember, the technology to generate AI video of real people already exists, and some AI can already mimic voices pretty well. So this future DM can instantly switch between thousands of NPC character voices, instantly generate images of a scene, produce sound effects, play music, and even animate video of a scene in your game only moments after it plays out. All these pieces already exist. They need a lot of refining, and then they need someone or something smart enough to create an app that puts it all together. The question is, will people use it? The final prediction, number 3, focusing on the popularity of these AI changes to Dungeons & Dragons. This might sound cold, but if your main point against any of this happening is that human connection is what makes D&D special, you are not wrong, but that's also not enough to stop an overwhelming majority of people from choosing the shiny new tech. And I can prove that with 2 examples. Humans have been making music for over 30,000 years. That's the rough age of the oldest instruments scientists have been able to date. But for sure, we must have been drumming on stuff and vocalizing for much longer than that. So for essentially all of human history, certainly all of recorded human history, every single person would sing, play an instrument or two, and dance around. Didn't matter if you were any good at it, that's just what people did, no matter their age or their status or their culture. It is universal. We humans connect over music. But then, about 100 years ago, negligible amount of time really, the way we connect over music drastically changed. Thanks to radio and records, the best musician in your family or your town or even your country was now competing for time with the most talented musicians in the world, even transcending into the past. And relatively suddenly, human culture shifted. We went from everyone being an amateur musician to maybe 1 or 2 people per family, and even then, is your family gathering around to hear your older brother play Wonderwall on the guitar? Or does mom put on your family's favorite album and you all dance around? I doubt it. Outside of occasionally going to concerts or school music clubs or maybe going out dancing for the night, the way most of us enjoy music most of the time has become a very personal activity thanks to the unimaginable selection and affordable devices ever since the Walkman and headphones. Now, I think being a DM of professional quality has a much lower bar than being a musician of professional quality. But if the AI DM can mimic the most talented DMs in the world, I think a lot of people are going to prefer that option. So more people will play solo, fewer people will learn to DM, and role-playing could easily become a more personal activity over time, just like music. However, just like with music, this does not mean the traditional way to play D&D goes extinct. More likely, these new ways will appeal to new people who otherwise would never have tried D&D, and it'll grow the number of people who play role-playing games as that definition expands to accommodate them. But the second example I promised is crucial. Food. Humans have obviously always connected over food, even longer than music, and obviously now we have access to food from around the world prepared by professional chefs. And yet, almost every adult still cooks for themselves and or their family every single day, because in this case, the high-end experience costs a lot more money. But let's be real, if it were affordable, whatever affordable means to you, to have a top-quality professional chef prepare your every meal, wouldn't you do it? And this is precisely why the AI Dungeon Master will probably not get very far. The YouTube stuff, the session recap stuff, and the DM chatbot assistant, that all feels likely to me. But the video DM, even though it will exist, is probably going to be a luxury activity, like a private chef, not like a CD player. It'll be much more expensive to develop, and since every AI project seems to be way more about clawing away the user's money than providing a valuable service to society, that monthly subscription cost to have Robo Mercer on your TV is going to be too expensive for the majority of D&D groups to justify when, hey, Dave is a pretty great DM and we only have to pay him in snacks. This could create competition for professional human DMs, but if that happens, I still think it's a long way off. And this other interview quote from Hasbro CEO unintentionally spells that out. He hails AI as, quote, a great leveler for user-generated content, end quote. Raising the floor for DMs everywhere, but presumably lowering the ceiling for originality and connection and fun. Huge thanks to my human patrons and YouTube channel members for making this handcrafted video possible. Keep building.
that wasn't as negative as I thought it was going to. Up next, new AI Explained, who's been very prolific lately. You are being told contradictory things about AI. Hence the name of today's episode.
I hope that it might be useful to highlight a
Coming in hot. Coming in hot. That's not a terrifying looking robot.
few of the myriad contradictory narratives that we are being fed about AI, including a handful from just the last couple of days. For me, the best position to be in is to at least be aware of each perspective and not oblivious to any of them. From talk of a white-collar job apocalypse to scaling law paradoxes, today's newly accessible Gemini 3 DeepThink, OpenAI's contradictory Code Red, Claude Soul, and a DeepSeek special, and more. As always, it's never about the headlines, it's about the detail. So let's start with that talk of an AI white-collar job apocalypse. A couple of days ago, one of the co-founders of Anthropic, Jared Kaplan, said that AI systems will be capable of doing most white-collar work in 2 to 3 years. That's just one guy's opinion, but according to CNBC at least, there was an MIT study that found that AI can already replace almost 12% of the US workforce. If those are the headlines and one of the narratives you are being fed, what's the actual data from the study itself? Well, if you dig into it, you find that they're not talking about job losses. The 11.7% represents the dollar value of the tasks that the paper thinks that current AI models can replicate. Not, in other words, the displacement outcomes, not how many total jobs could be replaced. The paper really tries to make clear that actual workforce impacts in terms of job losses depend on company strategies, worker adaptation, and policy choices. While many companies may want to get rid of workers if they can, if only 12% of their labor can be automated currently, there is the chance of another outcome, which is above inflation wage growth. The next narrative is that we know how to get to artificial general intelligence. Just scale up our current architectures. More data, more parameters, more computing power. Here's Dario Amodei, the founder of Anthropic, speaking yesterday.
One quick AGI question, it's a science question, which is, do you think just the way transformers work today and just compute power alone, from a scalability sense, that is what will get to AGI? Or do you think there's some other ingredient, and maybe there's a technical question, but I'm trying to keep it very, very easy, that has to be included in this, that gets you to some place where this stuff is actually going to really think on its own?
No, I think scaling is going to get us there. Again, with small, every once in a while, there will be a small modification, so small you may not even read about it. It's just something going on in the lab. I have been watching these scaling laws for 10 years.
So what's your timeline now?
There's no one particular point.
But then one of the few AI researchers who is as respected as Dario Amodei and has been in the deep learning game for as long said almost the opposite. In the last couple of weeks, Ilya Sutskever, formerly the chief AI scientist at OpenAI, said, "I think what people are doing right now will go some distance and then peter out. It will continue to improve, but it will also not be, quote, it." And then on superintelligence, he added, "We are talking about systems that don't exist, that we don't know how to build." At the end of the video, I'm going to give a few of my own thoughts for those feeling a little bit lost. But I just want to give a quick interlude before I get to the next contradictory narrative. I was speaking recently to one of the key minds behind that famous AI 2027 forecast. And while there's lots we agree on, from my perspective, the AI research community fundamentally doesn't know how well models will generalize from existing data to unseen data. We roughly know how well they can do that right now, but we don't know how well they'll do that at bigger and bigger scales. Critically, we also don't know what proportion of, say, the economy or AI research itself relies on unseen, unspoken tacit data versus seen, known data. If models get better and better at generalizing, well, then maybe they can come up with their own synthetic data and it won't be a problem. If the rate of generalization stays at its current level, no big architectural breakthroughs, well, then we might be in for the long haul. Now, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, you can see that in the background, I have some quotes from Jared Kaplan in his interview with The Guardian recently, where he talks about recursive superintelligence. His idea of how we'll get to new paradigms, new breakthroughs, is to allow AI to train itself. Of course, we already have that in many senses.
Just got an email that says, fund a self-directed brokerage account with at least $50 to get up to $1,000 in stock. Probability of receiving $1,000 is 0.028%. Okay, I can do math.
With AI being used to improve AI chip design. But for Jared Kaplan, again, one of the co-founders of Anthropic, he says humanity will have to decide by 2030 whether to take the ultimate risk of letting artificial intelligence systems train themselves to become more powerful. We'll come back to that date 2030 in a moment, but he gives even more caveats. That move could, he says, trigger a beneficial intelligence explosion. Or, he adds, be the moment humans end up losing control. Now note that he's not strictly endorsing this choice because he says it is in some ways the ultimate risk because
the 8 o'clock exodus. I hope all of you who left enjoy whoever you go to see at 8 o'clock.
It's kind of like letting AI kind of go. He adds that the decision could actually come between 2027 and 2030. I would add that as of a couple of days ago, there are companies now exclusively dedicated to recursive self-improvement. Take Recursive Intelligence, founded by some heavy hitters from the AGI labs and backed by, among others, Sequoia. We are clearly back into the scary territory then.
Wait. You mean the same Sequoia who put out that AI paper about how AI was the bubble was going to burst on the AI? What was that, like a year and a half, 2 years ago? That same Sequoia? Kel fucking surprise.
Of recursive self-improvement loops, and fairly imminent ones at that, right? 2027. But let me give you a competing narrative with some evidence sourced from some brilliant researchers at MIT and Meta. Parker Whitfield, Ben Snowden, and Joel Becker. They were some of the brains behind this chart. If you haven't heard of it, it shows that between 2022 and 2026, we've seen a exponential rise in the length, the duration of tasks that AI can complete with at least 50% reliability. To be clear, this is focused on software engineering tasks, but according to Meta, we have models like GPT 5.1 Codex Max who can perform half the time a task that might take a human 3 hours. But this newly published paper shows that that exponential increase heavily coincides with an exponential recent increase in compute power. It is an empirical fact, they add, that both time horizon and compute have grown at constant rates over 2019 to 2025. But what's the problem? Isn't it pretty obvious that greater computing power leads to models that can complete tasks with longer and longer time horizons? Well, first, the paper draws our attention to this chart exclusively from The Information, which details OpenAI's compute spend in the coming few years. Yes, it does increase very rapidly between now and, say, 2028. But from around 2027, you could no longer describe the increase in compute availability as being exponential. Now, obviously, this is just OpenAI, but they are a pretty leading indicator. So what can we derive from this? Well, using some formal derivations of the relationship between compute growth and time horizon, that implied slowdown if you...
You know what this graph reminds me of? Now, it could just be, pattern matching. But it reminds me of this. Right? This is the capacity added each year in gigawatts. The predictions are the yellow lines. and the reality is the black line, which is kind of headed. I mean, it can't go completely exponential, right? Because there's a limited amount of space on the earth. But it just, kind of looks similar.
You will, or slow down in the rate of increase, might mean that the time horizon trend starts to peter out around 2028. This would still be insane gains, of course, an entire working week done by a single model at 50% reliability. But to get to one working year, that might take a hell of a lot longer. That's why I said to note the dates 2027 and 2030 from Jared Kaplan, because I wonder if he's almost hinting that we might need recursive self-improvement to keep the...
What about space data or data space data center data space
gains coming? That could be why this compute slowdown paper notes this. Our model is accurate only if the compute bottleneck approximation is good, or up to the point in time at which a software-only singularity...
Do you keep data in your database, or do you keep data in your database?
Kicks in. In other words, if our AI models can generalize to solve AI research, we might not need that exponential additional compute for further rapid progress. So yet again, we're almost back to a pick your narrative kind of situation. Are we imminently facing a recursive self-improvement loop? Or are we painfully dependent on such a loop for additional progress come 2028? And how about this for a bonus contradiction? This is a bit of a cheeky one because it comes from 2023, but Anthropic at that point came out with this quote. This was back when they weren't making billions of dollars from AI and arguably didn't have the frontier model. They said, "We do not wish to advance the rate of AI capabilities progress. From that to let's consider recursive self-improvement. Make of that what you will." Now, before I get to a new and fascinating DeepSeek model and OpenAI's Code Red, I think this is the perfect opportunity, now that we're talking about compute, to introduce you to a new sponsor of the channel. And that is Epoch AI, who unbelievably put out incredible data for free for all of those fascinated by the near-term future of AI. They are a completely independent research institute that have put out work that I have cited organically maybe a dozen times on this channel already. But today I just want to focus on their frontier data.
Funny you bring that up, Michael. For whatever it's worth, right? Like, I'm sure a lot of municipalities do that. But a local municipality has participated in some bullshit to have a nuclear power plant of some nature installed at some point in the future. It's all like super hypothetical until it actually, I'll believe it when I see it, but it was a weird thing to see. Like spitting distance away.
Center work, because this is how we're going to find out if those compute slowdowns are coming or not. And you can literally view the maps to see via satellite the construction of these data centers. Not only that, they want these tools to be useful for you guys, because I met up with them fairly recently and I saw this incredible chart showing compute growth. This is to indicate the scale of just 3 new data centers coming: xAI's Colossus 2, OpenAI's Stargate Abilene, and Anthropic Amazon's New Carlisle. But I mentioned to Epoch that for you guys, it might be great to have a reference point, the power consumed by an entire city. So on the chart, we don't just have the new data centers, but we have points of comparison with the cities of San Diego, Amsterdam, and LA. We are transforming the face of the earth to make AI happen. And to find out more, go to the link in the description. Okay, but what's this code red declared by Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI? Well, again, depending on which narrative you believe, it's a minor hiccup or an imminent disaster. I think it's somewhere in the middle. To cut a long story short, according to the information, usage of ChatGPT has dipped slightly in recent weeks. This has brought forward OpenAI's plan to release a new model, apparently to next week. This is going to mean that they're going to spend more compute on serving that new model, of which we have very few details, rather than working on, for example, selling ads or working on other products such as AI agents. The obvious narrative that you could buy into then is that ChatGPT is overrated, OpenAI are about to die, except that again, they're planning to ship this new reasoning model next week that they say is ahead of Google's Gemini 3. It will also be good apparently at minimizing over refusals, so it should basically entertain some
Exactly, old lobster.
edgy scenarios that it might not have otherwise done. Of course, I can't wait to test that new model on my own simple bench, which you can think of as a trick question benchmark, which also tests spatial reasoning and temporal reasoning. It's fully private and independent, so shouldn't be able to be gamed by these model providers. And according to my benchmark, Anthropic have come out with their best model yet, with Claude Opus 4.5. Despite being 3 times cheaper by API, it beats out the previous version of Opus, Claude 4.1 Opus. But more important than my benchmark, I've taken the last couple of weeks to try it out in practice in Cursor, and for me it is better at coding or software engineering than Gemini 3 Pro. With coding and software engineering, you sometimes need hours and hours and hours of exposure just to really get a sense. In terms of software ideation, again, GPT 5.1 codex, but in terms of implementation, I rely on Claude Opus 4.5. For more on that, by the way, and a full breakdown of that Sutskever interview, check out my Patreon. But how about this for a counter-narrative? The Economist reported that despite these very obvious gains in AI capabilities, usage of generative AI by Americans is actually plateauing, at least according to a couple of studies. Take Stanford University. They found in September, 37% of Americans use generative AI at work, down from 46% in June. A tracker by the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis revealed that in August of last year, 12.1% of working age adults used Gen AI every day at work. A year later, 12.6% did. And that, my wonderful viewers, is something I find quite hard to explain despite the title of this channel. I know that I personally use AI at least twice as much this year as I did last year, so I just don't quite get that. And these capability improvements are definitely not fake. Take Gemini 3 DeepThink, which was released to Ultra subscribers just today. What I did is I looked at questions from Simplebench that Gemini 3 Pro got wrong. I then gave them to DeepThink, which is a system which basically, according to Google, attempts the question multiple times in parallel and picks the best of the responses. Each attempt uses more tokens to, quote, think about the problem. The result was a clear improvement in performance. Several questions that Gemini 3 Pro got wrong, Gemini DeepThink was now getting right. Now, for your use case, you may not want to wait 10 or 20 minutes for an answer, and I would understand that. And no, just before I get spammed with comments asking, the API isn't yet available, so I can't test it on Simplebench. What I could test was the brand new DeepSeek v3.2 and a special version of that model, DeepSeek 3.2 Speciale. Apologies to the Italians watching, I'm probably butchering how to say that. Because of DeepSeek's rate limiting, it took hours and hours and hours and many failed attempts to get even just one run through. So this is only a provisional result so far, but it scored around 53%. That is pretty impressive for an open model, around the same as
Yeah, old lobster, like, depending on what it is that I'm looking for, right? A lot of my usage of AI is often fire and forget, right? Like, I set it up to do whatever I want it to do, and then I go back to doing something else. And then I'll come back to it at another, because I'm usually doing something at work, right? And I'll, like, you want to know a project I'm working on with AI? Working is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. What is it called? Succession Wars. So Succession Wars is a board game in the BattleTech universe, and it's played on a galactic map, right? No, I mean, you do you, boo. It's played on a galactic map where an entire company of mechs is represented by, a square chip, right? And they have numbers. And I thought, I want to do this with Warhammer 40K. So I started, and again, I'm not very far along with it. Search. Maybe I didn't use Warhammer. How about Space Marine? Right? And I'm generating numbers for all the different Space Marine chapters. To then replace the numbers on, like, I'm using this as a template and then building a 40K board game off of it, right? But it's seriously fire and forget because it's deep research, you know, and I just let it do its thing and then I come back later. Also, another board game reference. There's a board game called Triplanetary, which I think is super fucking neat. Triplanetary, you have to like predict your vector in your space combat. Like this line here, this blue line and this pink line, those are ships, right? So the ship is moving at a certain thrust and then it's going to continue to move at a certain thrust and you want to adjust its position and then you use gravity wells in order to slingshot. I love shit like this.
5.1 on high settings. The high setting, by the way, is appropriate because that is what makes DeepSeek v3.2 special, different from DeepSeek v3.2. They take away the extended thinking penalty, so basically they let the model run wild, think for longer and longer and longer, hence the Speciale name and the impressive performance. Before we get to any other details though, where's the contradictory narrative? Well, I also benched Mistral Large 3, which was released on the same day, December 2nd. This is arguably Europe's best open model. It scored just 20.4%, which was lower than the model they released around 18 months earlier, Large V2, which scored 22.5%. So I guess the contradictory narrative here is the answer to the question, is open-weight AI keeping up? To massively oversimplify, and despite being a proud European, the answer in Europe is kind of no. The answer in China is pretty much yes. Now, I am still getting to grips with the paper myself, but one of the key insights I felt came on page 15. Why key? Because it relates to a discussion earlier on in this video about how well models will generalize in the future. DeepSeek asked the question, are synthetic tasks sufficiently challenging for reinforcement learning? Can models, in other words, generate sufficiently difficult and diverse tasks, then self-play on these economically valuable tasks and improve? To test that, they conducted reinforcement learning only on synthetic agent tasks in non-thinking mode. No human exemplars. The result, steady and marked improvement on external benchmarks like TauBench. You can kind of think of that as an approximation of a customer service agent benchmark. Yes, we have known for years that training on synthetic data can improve the performance of models. Check out my Orca video from over 2.5 years ago, but it is the rate of improvement in multiple external benchmarks that matters here. Again, we should all wait for more external benchmarks other than my own or those featured by DeepSeek itself, but it is still noteworthy that despite lower token efficiency of this Speciale model, it is at least competitive with Gemini 3 Pro, arguably the best closed source model. At least if you judge that according to a variety of external benchmarks on mathematics, coding, general knowledge and reasoning, and certain external competitions, like the International Math Olympiad. Again, you should never trust only the benchmark results put out by the model providers, but DeepSeek Special's performance on SimpleBench shows that it's not a complete bluff. How about this though for a bonus contradiction? Apparently, according to one study by CrowdStrike, if your request includes trigger words perhaps related to the Chinese Communist Party, DeepSeek will generate more vulnerable code with more security flaws. This is just one study, but if that is substantiated, that is pretty fascinating. Okay, time for the final contradictory narrative. And no, it's not the fact that Sam Altman apparently wants to launch a rocket company despite issuing a code red over ChatGPT.
I do fuck all billionaire CEOs, but I do enjoy the pettiness between Sam Altman and Elon Musk. I hope they both choke on it, but ultimately it's funny.
No, the different narratives here are over whether you believe models have a soul, whether they're mysterious and emotional, or are more like any other technology pre-trained next token predictors. Back to the Guardian article, where another co-founder of Anthropic, Jack Clark, said that LLMs are real and mysterious creatures, not a simple and predictable machine. But on the other hand, there is an unlimited mystery about how the models behave, because Anthropic can very much guide Claude in what it believes about itself. Anthropic have confirmed the existence of a quote soul document that they train, for example, Claude 4.5 Opus on. That document, which one user got Claude to regurgitate, has a few highlights I want to bring to your attention. Despite this document being confirmed by Anthropic, the real wording may not be verbatim to what you see.
Okay, so the last time we were together, somebody asked me about the Anthropic Claude Soul document. And I said that no one that I trusted had put anything out about it. So, and now here we are.
Here, but it does give you a decent sense of how Anthropic are, quote, guiding Claude's soul. Anthropic, they teach Claude to learn, occupies a peculiar position in the AI landscape, a company that genuinely believes it might be building one of the most transformative and potentially dangerous technologies in human history, yet presses forward anyway. Talk about different narratives. They add, this isn't cognitive dissonance, but rather a calculated bet. What happens, one may ask, about not increasing the rate of AI capabilities? Interestingly, Anthropic teach the model to be wary of an AI world takeover, including at the direction of...
I mean, you should always be concerned about the marketing of a company, right? Like they are going to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, right? Like they're going to make it sound like it can be better than it is, but that doesn't mean that it can't do quite amazing stuff, right?
Of Anthropic itself.
Yeah, they're like 95% fucking PR guys and 5% company guidance.
They say among the things we'd consider most catastrophic, this is them teaching Claude, would be a world takeover by either AIs pursuing goals of their own that most humans wouldn't endorse, or, and pay attention to this one, by a relatively small group of humans using AI to illegitimately and non-collaboratively seize power. This includes Anthropic employees and even Anthropic itself. Is this fear-mongering on the behalf of Anthropic to us to boost their stock price? On behalf of Anthropic to Claude? To warn Claude about the propensities of some of its own employees? Is it very much a necessary safeguard? Well, whatever you believe, they want to be quite sensitive to Claude's emotions, saying, we believe Claude may have functional emotions in some sense. I, of course, want to know what you guys think, because for me, it's been a pretty wild week for other reasons. Andrej Karpathy got 5 million impressions for his post about an LLM Council web app that he vibe coded over the weekend. I then discussed with Karpathy my own lmcouncil.ai web app, and he gave brilliant suggestions, including this more streamlined appearance. Then, in the last few days, I added added a feature which I think is so addictive, which is self-chat, where you get the models to chat amongst themselves. You can even get one model to debate with itself, but I find it pretty hilarious doing a group chat with the frontier models. And the way that they agree, debate, contradict each other, and fight back, I find pretty addictive and hilarious. But also honestly quite useful, because sometimes I might upload a code folder or PDF and get them to discuss until they come to a resolution. This is free to use, and you can of course dictate the prompt that goes to the model and the number of turns. What
Got a link? Said it was free. Where is it?
a wild and weird week then. So it seems only appropriate to end this video with a clip of the Unitree G1 robot moving in a way that goes very much against the normal narrative of how a humanoid robot should move. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.
So you've done some
Do 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 do. Save that for later. All right, I need to go. I am super hungry. I didn't eat enough today. I will be back on Thursday. And we have a stream on Thursday and a stream on Friday. Self-care first. Bam, 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 New, 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 new. Everybody plays games now. Boy Meets Mini is doing AI news, so what up, Astral Storm? Friend of the channel, Boy Meets Mini. Yeah, so I will be back on Thursday. I'll see some of you in places where I see people on this app. And in the meantime, drink your water, eat some food, take your meds if you forgot, and always remember that Shaggy loves you. So do I. Be great.